Welcome to the Angus Report. I'm your host, Clint Mefford. Join us this week for the latest cattle news and education. This month, we're focusing on cattle care and handling, part of the association's belief statement, Raising Standards. We visit a Tennessee Angus operation who strongly implements beef quality assurance guidelines. We hear about the implications of the BVD virus, and we learn about practical ways to approach disease management. This is the Angus Report. Last week, we visited with Deer Valley Farms in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and learned why beef quality assurance certification is an integral part of their operation. This week, we head back to Fayetteville to see some of the more specific practices they have implemented.
BQA certification is such an extremely important part of the game today. How we tend to these animals and how we take care of them, in essence, they are our equipment that we make our living with every day. And if we don't maintain them and we don't take care of them and we don't handle them in the right manner, it's pretty hard for them to take care of us and make us sustainable and continue making us profitable in this business. When you think of beef quality assurance, most people think of the cattle. It's just as much for the safety of your employees as it is for anything. We have designed this set of working pens where we have a gate system down the alleyway. We can easily sort cattle off left or right depending on what pen they need to go back to without our employees having to stand and hold and block and get in the way and risk being run over by the cattle. One of the key things to working cattle that makes life easier for them and us is as we go through and sort the cattle to bring them into the facility to work, we try to handle them with as much ease and care as possible. You want to be very slow and easy with them. Always set your systems up where the cattle will flow naturally. They want to leave the spot they're in, so they're going to follow the flow of those pens if the pens are set up right. We built this system where they can come in the back end and basically come into a tub, through an S-alley, out the chute, and right back out into the pens, and they never really get an opportunity to get stacked up or get on top of each other or get a lot of stress on them. We built most of the gates throughout this facility with bumpers on the side so that as we're coming up behind the cattle, they grab the wall easily. We don't have to worry about cattle coming back on those gates and knocking the gate back over the top of us and hurting some of us. All of the bumpers on these gates are coated with rubber, which reduces the noise, reduces the shock that the cattle get to hear and doesn't scare them and spook them as much. You'll notice we have a sweep tub system that feeds into an S-alley. So the cattle are always looking for the end of it. So they feed through it very well. We don't have obstructions. We don't have line of sight for them to see people and what's going on ahead of them. So they easily can just walk right through the S-alley and constantly looking for the end. We have slide gates on every section so that as the cattle come in, we can continually shut them off from the one in front or behind of them, and they're not running back and forth in the chute, piling up on top of each other and hurting each other. Also, if you notice, this chute's equipped with rubber padding all the way through the head gate, through the neck bars. Again, just trying to make things more comfortable, make things easier on the animal. We don't want to bruise and hurt the animal while we've got them caught in the head gate. Chute enables us to contain the cow very comfortably, but yet leaves us a viable injection site to give our shots. Everything you want to, as you're working these cattle, you want to come through slow and easy. No hooping, no hollering, no wild noises. Cattle are very sensitive to noise and activity. So the smoother and easier we can bring them through, the calmer they stay, the easier the day is for the cattle and for us. One of the important things about injections is always start with clean needles. We swap out needles in between each injection. We give all our injections in the neck. Come right in. Got a smooth, easy place to give the injection. No stress on the cattle, no stress on me. Veterinary-client relationship is one of the most important things that you can have as an operation from multiple standpoints. We work with our local vet that has been on staff here for years to develop vaccination protocols, worming protocols, multiple things, whether it's treatment of animals when we do encounter illnesses. We make certain that he's on board with our protocol for treating illnesses and use his recommendations. Antibiotics are our last resort for treatment of cattle. Vaccination protocols, mineral protocols, correct feed systems, those things manage health as good as anything. But much like your children at home, when they get sick and there's no other way, we have to resort to antibiotics to keep the animal alive and keep the animal healthy. So they are one of the things that we do at last resort to make sure that we ensure health for the animal. As we finish working the animal, you can see that the cattle are calm and comfortable by the way they leave the chute. They're not flying out, they're not raising cane, so very stress-free.
Next on the Angus Report, Perry takes us to Hickory House Restaurant, where we see beef quality assurance come full circle. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Jonathan Perry has explained the importance of beef quality assurance to us from a producer standpoint. But as the owner of Hickory House Restaurant, a local barbecue spot just a short drive from Deer Valley Farms, Perry has the unique perspective of observing BQA's impact on the end product and subsequently retailers and consumers.
Beef quality assurance starts at the farm, but ultimately owning a restaurant and serving high quality beef to customers brings it full circle. A lot of the things that we do on the farm every day have always done, maybe didn't realize the purpose quite to the extent that we should have. When you put yourself in that restaurant, put an apron on and stand behind the grill and then carry plates to the table and watch consumers actually eat our product at an end point, it gives you a lot of perspective, a lot of positive perspective about why those things are so important. Why we worry about where an injection site is, why we worry about how we handle those cattle and stress those cattle as they go through the chute and get hauled around the country. All of those things negatively impact our carcasses if they're not handled right. And if that high quality product doesn't get to the restaurant in the right shape and form, then we don't impact a positive eating experience from those consumers. You know, we take for granted the things that we do every day, and you know, lots of times change is hard, and we get irritated with the fact that regulations change and people's desires change, and it makes life difficult for us from a standpoint of age and source and tracking products and cattle care and handling, and the things that we do every day that we take for granted. We don't realize how it affects the product that we're sending out in the country. And you know, we are misconceived as an industry at times, but we care more about those animals and how they're treated and how we take care of them on a daily basis than anybody can ever imagine. They're our livelihood, they're our lifeblood. If we don't do that, we don't sustain. We don't have a product to keep us going from year to year and keep us in business. And you know, the things like injection sites and cattle care and handling, and we don't pay attention when we're doing it, but you get in this side of the business where you deal with meat every day and you realize that those blemishes and those injection sites cause quite a bit of trim loss. It affects my bottom line as a restaurant owner when I have to trim that product and am not able to serve it to my customer. We definitely want to be sure that we're serving a product that is as safe and as pure as we can put in front of the public. This week we'll go through probably 25 briskets. Ready to go on the smoker. You know, if we put a consistent, high-quality product out every night, our customers continue to come back time and time again, and repeat business is the lifeblood of the restaurant industry. When you walk through and you see the same customers weekend after weekend or week after week, you know you're doing something right, obviously, because they keep coming back. They enjoy our food, and you walk by a table and they stop you and they tell you, best steak I've ever eaten. You know, it really brings what we do as farmers and ranchers full circle, because, you know, our product that we produce every day has the need for that consistency. And everything we do, mating cattle, figuring out genetics, figuring out EPDs, is imperative that we are producing a quality, consistent product that enables that product to go down the line at the kill plant and qualify for certified Angus beef and be that consistent, high quality product every time. NCBA does a tremendous job of educating producers of the need and the importance of beef quality assurance, but we have to continue to push that message out. As a community, as an ag community, a livestock community, we have to realize that in today's society, with social media, with the ability for positive and negative things to travel so fast, we have to really be cognizant and pay attention to the fact that what we do is under a microscope and in the spotlight, and people want to see where their food comes from. They want to see how it was handled, how it was raised, how humanely it was treated. They want to see that it was a positive experience from start to finish. And they are continuing to put more and more pressure on us as producers to make sure that we're aware and that we verify what happens and that we ensure that that product starts at a positive point and ends at a positive point.
We check in now on the latest cattle market news with the Cattle Facts Update.
Hello, and welcome to the Cattle Facts Update. I'm Troy Bockelman. Since the U.S. government increased the mandatory blend rate of ethanol into gasoline in the 2000s, the ethanol market has played an ever-increasing role in the corn market. Currently, the USDA estimates that 5.575 billion bushels of corn will be used for ethanol in the 2018-19 crop year. This is roughly 1/3 of the total corn supply and the largest single demand category. Since November, the USDA corn use for ethanol estimate has been reduced by 75 million bushels, and given the current state of the ethanol industry, continued reductions in this category are possible. Ethanol producers are facing profitability struggles in late 2018 and into 2019. In looking at the estimated returns for an ethanol plant based in Iowa, with an average cost structure and assuming no risk management, margins are below break-even and at the lowest since 2013. While at times margins do track below break-even, sustained negative margins can affect ethanol production and the resulting corn demand. Over the last 8 weeks, production has averaged nearly 10 million gallons per week below year-ago levels, according to the weekly EIA ethanol production report. Now, what does this mean to the corn market? Currently, U.S. corn stocks-to-use are at 11.7%. Continued reductions in ethanol production can reduce corn demand and increase available supplies. For instance, if ethanol usage were to decrease another 100 million bushels, stocks-to-use would be nearly 1% higher. It will be important to watch the weekly ethanol production data as well as the USDA WASDE for an indication of continued corn demand erosion. The bottom line is the practical range for May corn futures contract is $3.65 to $4 a bushel, yet weaker ethanol production could pressure the corn market and limit the top side of the expected range. For the Angus Report and Cattle Facts, I'm Troy Bockelman.
To learn more about Cattle Facts, your leading source for beef industry market information, visit cattlefacts.com. Stay with us. We'll be back with more Angus Report after a break. Bovine viral diarrhea, or BVD, has historically been one of the more prevalent infectious diseases threatening cattle health. Dr. Stephen Folk, a professional services veterinarian at Boehringer Ingelheim Animal Health, discusses the adverse effects associated with BVD and why producers should be wary of its stance as a gateway virus.
BVD is a very common, it's basically everywhere virus. kind of a misnomer when we say bovine viral diarrhea, because the first instances of it were in a diarrhea syndrome, so we call it a bovine viral diarrhea. But in reality, the bovine viral diarrhea virus does so much more. It actually impacts the immune system. It's very immunosuppressive. So it knocks back the immune system. So it basically opens the door to every other disease out there. So it affects health at all levels. And that's why now we even consider it more of a respiratory pathogen, because it's causing the respiratory system to weaken, and all these other bugs now can cause problems. BVD also has reproductive implications. It causes infertility, early fetal issues, early embryonic death. So it can hurt your reproduction as well. So we're talking syndromes way beyond just diarrhea when we talk BVD. It has so many more implications. And we also know when animals have suppressed immune systems or fighting the bovine viral diarrhea virus, you're not going to get average daily gains as well. So you're going to lose that efficiency too. So it's going to hurt your bottom line from a health aspect, from gains to reproduction, as well as the old traditional illness of BVD.
Folks says the virus has evolved, and producers should be cognizant of which subtype is affecting their herd, as it can impact vaccine decisions.
So why producers should be very concerned about the BVD virus type 1B that is out there now, the subtype, is there's been a change. If you go back 30 years, BVD 1A was the most common BVD virus out there. And then late 80s, 90s, the type 2 came along. Well, guess what? They went back and looked at the BVD viruses being isolated out there now, and BVD 1B is now the most common one out there. We're talking like, when we look at in our own region, our own area here and kind of east of the Mississippi and stuff, we're finding like 70% plus of the time it's 1B. And what's even more important is this: all the vaccines out there have either type 1A in it or type 2. They don't have 1B. So that's kind of important if you think about it. Does your vaccine cross-protect for 1B or not? So 1B is the most important one because it's the most common out there, and you need to know whether your vaccines can handle that, because none of the vaccines actually have 1B in them. BVD type 1B spreads the same way all the other BVDs do. So through contact with infected animals, or through contact with what they call a PI, which is persistently infected carrier. So they can get it through an exposure during an outbreak where everyone's spreading the nice virus around, or there could actually be a carrier within the herd, a PI, that is actually creating super high levels of this virus and spreading it everywhere even faster and easier. When it comes to BVD, remember, the biggest thing is you want to control it and you want to get ahead of it in the first place. We don't want to let it be an insidious problem hiding in the herd, causing all sorts of other problems. You may be complaining about a cough or maybe some pink eyes or just these calves that don't respond to your treatments like they used to. Well, it may not be that your procedures aren't working. It may be there's actually BVD hiding in your herd, immunosuppressing them, just making them more prone to all these problems and not letting them respond. So make sure you're vaccinating properly for BVD. Make sure you're covering for 1B, because that is the most common one that's out there now. Make sure you don't have PIs in your herd. If there's any questions, work with your veterinarian, do some testing. And if you do buy new animals, let's make sure we bring in clean animals and we use good biosecurity.
Consult with your veterinarian if you have concerns about BVD in your herd. Up next, a veterinarian provides some insight on how to manage disease challenges. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. We caught up with Robin Faulkner, a veterinarian at Cattle Flow, who presented on disease management in New Orleans at the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention. He encouraged producers to take more practical management approaches to reduce disease challenges.
So one of the things I really wanted producers to focus on was to look at disease as a systemic issue and not as just an animal health issue. I'll give you an example. A common question would be, what's the cost of a case of pink eye? And most people will answer that question like, well, I'm going to lose this many pounds of gain and I'm going to spend this much treating it, so it's going to cost $100, I think is what one of the attendees said. I threw that question right back at them. Well, what if it was a registered bull? Now, that's obviously a lot more expensive case because no one wants to buy a bull with a spot in his eye. But then I took it even further into a systems way of looking at it. What if it messed up the marketing of your calf crop? So if you have active eyes, you can't market your cattle. As a matter of fact, even if you had pre-sold them and contracted them, it might give the person that bought them valid reason to back out of the contract. So that could cost me hundreds of dollars a head if the market had moved in the wrong direction. So really, we don't need to just think about pink eye like, oh, it's just a disease that I need to protect from because it causes direct losses in a animal. It could actually mess up the marketing of my cattle and cost me a whole lot of money. So I think a lot of times just being able to elevate and look at these things from a bigger perspective.
Faulkner stresses the importance of using vaccines correctly if producers want to receive their benefits.
I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as cattlemen is thinking that if we buy a vaccine, we get the benefit of it. Or if we buy it and throw it out the window at 70 miles an hour, we get the benefit of it. Vaccines, in order to be effective, we have to give them properly, which means our dosing and a dosing interval, and timing in relation to disease. And I gave an example to the audience where I thought a vaccine could actually do them harm, and I'll repeat it to you here. If I use a pink eye vaccine that should be 2 doses, and I only use 1 dose, and I use it really early in the pink eye season, even if I'd given 2 doses, it wouldn't have lasted all the way to marketing of the cattle. But 1 dose might actually make my pink eye break later. So maybe it helps. Maybe I have a little less pink eye, but I have it later, and now it's interfering with the marketing of my cattle. So the product worked. It made my pink eye slightly less, but it also pushed my pink eye into the time I was marketing the cattle. So if my biggest risk from a disease like pink eye was interfering with my marketing, then I should give my vaccine in a way to protect my marketing. Not convenience because, oh, I just bought these cattle or I've got my hands on them, so let's do it now. Because that vaccine potentially could make my problem worse instead of better.
Hidden commingling is another factor that should be taken into consideration.
One of the biggest mistakes producers make when it comes to disease is not recognizing hidden commingling and not realizing that disease doesn't recognize ownerships or brands. And when they have separate herds, and for management reasons they have to mix those cattle together, that's actually like 2 different people mixing their cattle together. So that can create societal stress, and it also can create disease instability, and that can lead us having problems like calf scours, summer pneumonia, post-weaning BRD. So you're not just moving cattle, you're moving the bacteria and viruses and other stuff that are in your herd around. And same as when we go buy a replacement bull. We may be bringing in good genetics, but we may also be bringing in some pathogens or different strains than we have in our herd. Or we may have ones in our herd that are a risk to that animal. So putting a little forethought into how we move cattle around and what the disease implications are is pretty important. Vaccines were really like the 5th strand in a fence. So the corner post, the line post, and the first 4 strands, that's what really keeps their herd in and keeps the neighbor's bull out. And the vaccines are just like a 5th strand. And I think so often we come from the perspective that the vaccines are our animal health program or the dewormer is our animal health program, but it's really the biosecurity, the biocontainment, how we handle the movements of our cattle when we can create disease instabilities. So yeah, I've had a lot of conversations about that 5th strand.
You know, with record amounts of moisture across the entire country, proper vaccination protocol is extremely important. And that's a wrap for this week's Angus Report. Tune in next week for industry-leading news and education, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Angus TV, for more highlights from the association. See you next week.